Well, Allah says, نَزَّلَهُ عَلَى قَلْبِكَ. You know, Allah says He sent it down to your heart. Like Allah said about the Quran, He says He sent it down to your heart. He didn't say نَزَّلَهُ عَلَى دِمَاغِكَ. He didn't say He sent it down to your brain. So maybe indeed the heart needs to be purified in a certain manner, so that it can receive the Quran in a certain way as well. Allahu Alam. But certainly there is an interconnectivity there, where a lot of it which can be, I'm saying, identified or proven on a material level. And remember, there's still a dimension there with a ruhani dimension, a ruh. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ قُلْ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. They ask you about the ruh, the soul, say that the soul is from the command of Allah, and you don't know about, or you have not been given of that much knowledge of the soul. So is the heart the seat of the soul? Is there a connection between the brain, the heart, and the soul? These are questions Allah has told us in the Quran we have not been given, except for small knowledge about it. But nevertheless, this whole incident, the reason why I bring this to your attention is because if someone now comes and says, well, your Quran got it wrong because it's talking about the heart as having a cognitive faculty, say, wait, hold on. The heart does have a cognitive faculty according to peer review. And number two, it's not saying that's only the only place with the cognitive faculty. Which is why our scholars, even the Salaf said, for example, Ibn Taymiyyah and Imam Ahmad, that it's a combination of the aql, or the intellect, or the rationality, is in combination of different places. And of them is the heart, and of them is the brain, and of them is this, and maybe the soul as well. We don't know exactly where it is, the pinpoint, the mahal of it. But this is not an argument against Islam. In fact, if anything, it's an argument for Islam. It's, once again, the attack has become an argument for us. Any questions on that?
Could we say that maybe wisdom comes from the heart and knowledge comes from the brain?
I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know where it comes from. I mean, it could come from a combination of both. Like, you know, when Imam Ahmad and Ibn Taymiyyah following him said that when the brain is when the heart is filled up, the information goes to the brain. Yeah, that was based on maybe his understanding of science at the time. Maybe his understanding of processes. We don't have to believe in that because there's no hadith that says this. The takeaway from that is he finds it acceptable to believe, just like many of them, that the information is in more than one center in the brain, in the body. It's in the heart, it's in the brain. He doesn't consider it to be a contradiction to the Islamic text. He doesn't consider it to be an affront to this incident of the Seerah. He doesn't consider it, and so on and so forth. So where exactly do we have information for what? No one actually knows. These are the things, like, for example, transplants are one of the best ways of finding out, and looking at rat hearts and seeing the bundles of neurons and stuff like that. But it shows you it's so weird that we thought for such a long time that the heart was just a pump. And only recently we're really getting all this information showing it's not a pump, actually. It's way more complex than that. And it's given credence to all of these things that when people say, it's not just a figure of speech, we say, my heart is broken. Then there is a layer of material evidence now that supports the idea of heartbreak being a physical process. A very powerful thing, isn't it? But then that it's not just about, this has implications on psychology. It has implications on many things, because it's not just about manipulating the neurotransmitters in the brain, because there could be even neurotransmitters being affected in the heart. It's not about just manipulating. You are not just a brain and a body. You're more than that. You're more complicated than that.
What about stress?
Yeah.
Stress, like when...
Well, if they're saying that neurotransmitters and hormones are affected by the heart processes, then obviously stress is... adrenaline is a stress hormone, right? So if it affects the adrenal gland, if something in the heart can affect the adrenal, then it affects stress, by extension. I mean, when you're stressed out, what your body does responding to that is it produces adrenaline. That's what it does.
There's cases of like old people who've been together 50 years, and once the wife dies, the husband dies a week later. And so many cases of that.
Yeah, and
a lot of cases.
The heartbreak, people die from heartbreak. It's actually a thing. Anyway, so let's move on. So that is one thing. Talking about heartbreak, and the Prophet ﷺ himself suffered a lot of heartbreak. And one of them is that he, subhanAllah, and if you really think about it, I think we don't emphasize this enough when we're talking about the Seerah of the Prophet, is that he lost both of his parents at a very young age. And that really humanizes the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to people. Because when you think about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, why do we always imagine, okay, yes, he was a warrior, yes, he was a political leader and a statesman, but the first thing that doesn't come to your mind is a man who lost both of his parents and then lost all of his children except for one. Like, he's suffered the most heartbreak that you can humanly imagine anyone suffering. He lost both of his parents as a child, and he lost all of his children as an adult.
His wife and uncle in the same year as well.
And his wife and uncle in the same year.
Beloved wife and beloved uncle. Yeah.
So the question is, when did he lose his parents? And once again, I couldn't find any authentic hadith on either the mother or the father. So in terms of when the mother passed away, there are 3 or 4 opinions I found. One opinion says 4 years old, one opinion says 5 years old, 6 years old, and 7 years old. So there's clearly no hadith that's authentic about this, but it's definitely in that time period, yani. And Ibn Ishaq is very staunch in saying that the father of the Prophet ﷺ died when she was still pregnant with him, so before she gave birth to him. But other people have different opinions. For example, one I've come across 2 months, I've come across 8 months and 28 months. The truth is we don't know, because there's no authentic narration that comes, and it tells us about this. When exactly did his father pass away? Abdul Muttalib died, or his granddad, as you know now because you've done the lineage thing, died when he was either 2 years or 8 years. Well, that's a big difference, isn't it? So when did exactly he die? We don't know exactly when he died, but we know that it was when he was a boy. We don't know exactly about this thing for a fact, but these are some of the opinions. Now, if you consider the fact that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was an orphan, if you consider the fact he was an orphan, what does it do? When you're an orphan, it allows you to be empathetic. It does, especially with other orphans. And you'll find that the religion of Islam, and we don't mention this enough, and I think we should, the religion of Islam is the most ancient religion which discusses orphans. أنا وكافل اليتيم كهاتين في الجنة. It's a hadith of the Prophet أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. Me and the one who looks after the yatim or the orphan is like this, and he done this in Jannah. And there's so many hadith of the Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم where he's talking about orphans, and the Quran talks about orphans a lot. Surah An-Nisa is filled with references to the orphans. And sometimes, subhanAllah, Allah mentions orphans and women in the same space. Because women, although it's not the same as an orphan that has no protection, but she can suffer from a lack of protection as well. يَسْتَفْتُونَكَ فِي النِّسَاءِ قُلِ اللَّهُ يَفْتِيكُمْ فِيهِنَّ وَمَا يُتْلَى فِي الْكِتَابِ فِي يَتَامَى النِّسَاءِ. For example, that they ask you about women. Allah says in the Quran, they ask you about women. Allah will tell you about women, and what is being mentioned in the book في يتامى النساء, about women who have come from an orphan background, particularly. Yeah, so this is the famous verse on polygamy. We don't remember sometimes or remind ourselves that it actually came in the context of looking after orphans, which shows you that the idea of, look, Muslim men in particular are commissioned, and Muslim people in general are commissioned to look after orphans in the society. You have to seek them out, because these are people who have lost the most important, if you like, support system that you can have, which are parents at a very young age. So we are commissioned to find the orphan and to protect the orphan and to help the orphan. And obviously now, what's happening in Palestine, of all the negative things that are happening, one positive thing is give us opportunity to go, and after this situation subdues or subsides or the dust settles, then there's going to be a lot of orphans that we can help. And that's allowing people across the world to have a lot of good deeds from the situation. Because a lot of them have lost their parents. And you can see how sad it is. And especially people in that context, in battle zones and war zones and stuff like that, to seek out the orphan and try and help out the orphan is a huge part of the religion of Islam. It's many verses mentioned about it, many hadith mentioned about it. But the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was given special, like one of the things, he was given a special empathetic spirit. By being an orphan himself, he can associate with the idea of orphanhood in a more deep and meaningful manner. So that's one of the benefits of the Prophet ﷺ being an orphan. And in addition to that, self-reliance. Because when you don't have the most important support system, then you are forced to fend for yourself. Tawakkul, the idea of reliance on Allah alone. I mean, imagine his parents died, and then his granddad died, and then after that is when he got a bit older, his uncle died. So everyone is dying that is closest to him. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So this shows you that Allah wants him to attach to him and rely on him directly, and it produces the deepest forms of tawakkul or reliance on Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. So that's clearly one of the things, and compassion. And we forget the fact that وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. The Prophet ﷺ was sent as a compassion for all of humankind. as a mercy to all of humankind. And part of that is that he lived the impoverished life. He didn't live this silver spoon lifestyle. He didn't. A lot of people now want to make the Prophet for their own agendas into like almost a middle class or upper class man who's got this big money, and it's no. He lived a very, very, very difficult childhood. Very difficult childhood, and his parents died, and his uncle died, and then his wife died, and all of these died, and then his children died. Like, what more? How much more grief can a human being? And it's really incredible, because I was looking a little bit about the psychology of orphans, and this goes to the next slide.